Hello, and welcome to North Country Politics. This is episode 3. It's Friday, February 20th, 2026. We are here on this podcast to talk about North Country politics, happenings in the North Country, whether it's local, state, or county. And we've got some pretty exciting things that happened in the State House yesterday.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, we had session yesterday in Concord. There's a couple of bills that I really want to talk to you about. House Bill 1811 came out of the Health and Human Services Committee. It has to do with children's vaccines. I feel very passionate about this bill. As amended, this bill decreases the number of immunizations for children, yet still mandates the polio vaccine. This bill establishes parental rights. The other thing it does, as amended, it extends the right to bodily integrity. Now, nothing in this bill prevents you from getting the vaccines you want, but it just does not mandate the vaccines to the people that do not want them. I would say this bill actually failed. It failed on a voice vote. I voted against the ITL personally, but there were a number of people in the House that didn't like this bill.
And this is one of those bills that I was really torn on, because we all had vaccines growing up, and in our lifetime we saw the riddance of smallpox, and polio was almost non-existent anymore. But a couple of things that came up through the debate that I really didn't realize is how many injuries, permanent injuries, are from vaccines. It's not published, it's not talked about, but there are some significant injuries that people are having. And I question in my mind, when we were young, we didn't see autism. And I wonder, is that tied somehow to the vaccines? I don't know. But like I said, I was torn. I called one of my daughters, who's a nurse, and went over it with her. And I was a little surprised because I really wanted her opinion. And being in the health field, I felt that she was going to say, yeah, you need your vaccines. But she was just the opposite. She said, it's up to the parent's choice.
That's right.
And they say, well, you're going to infect the other kids. Well, if your kids are vaccinated, then you're not going to. So I went with her and said, you know what, this is parental rights and the parent's choice.
I feel the same way, Mike. I feel that it's a parental right issue. And there was another House Bill 1499 through the Housing Committee. This is totally unrelated to our last bill, but it establishes grounds for eviction. Now, as amended, this bill would allow tenants to be evicted for things like if they're a felon, if they have criminal convictions, illegal immigrants, if they're a sex offender. So that's grounds for eviction. Yet if there is written permission, if they come to the landlord early before the tenancy and say, look, this is what I have for an issue, and they allow them to stay, then there's no eviction problem.
We need honesty and everything up front. And the thing that I liked about this bill is, like you said, it puts everything up front. If you've got an apartment full of kids, you don't want someone that's on the sex registry in your apartment. You don't want to poison your own apartment. And today we see so many squatters and so many landlords that have lost their rights to control their apartments. I like this bill.
Yeah. Yep. Well, this bill, I'm not sure how that came out of committee. Do you have that?
It passed.
It did pass.
Yes. 185 to 159.
Thank you.
A bill that I really hit home with me yesterday was a bill that prohibits the schools from teaching critical race theory, LGBTQ, I'll make sure I get it right, ideology, and ensures that no child is called inferior. And that just cleans up our some of the stuff that's going on in our schools. Our schools, I really feel, need to get back to basics. Teach your math, teach your English, teach your science, your social studies, your history. But to tell a young white child that you're inferior because of white privilege, and to as a punishment. 8-year-old boy paint his fingernails for punishment. That stuff, it's just going to stop.
Yeah.
And I was very, very happy on that.
Now this bill also, they reference it to the Charlie Act, named after Charlie Kirk. And something that I found kind of troublesome, while our proficiency ratings are down, instead of teaching reading, writing, arithmetic, where all the schools are focused on the wheel of white privilege.
And it's crazy. And one thing that came out of that debate yesterday was in the city of Manchester, in English and mathematics, their proficiency rating is 19%.
I know.
It's crazy. It's crazy. We need to get back to basics and doing our job, what we're supposed to do.
Yeah. Now, there's another bill, House Bill 1799, Education Funding Bill. Would you like to talk about that one?
Yeah, that was a little bit of a crazy bill. They showed the bill as removing the tax cap for school funding. And a lot of these bills, the titles don't quite match what they are. But basically what it was giving Manchester, the city of Manchester, an additional $10 million for their schools because their funding got cut this year. But they don't tell you that Manchester's funding got increased by more than that last year. And a lot of our schools, like even Colebrook, we lost $500,000 this year in state funding. And this was a bill put in by some of the representatives to make Manchester whole. So it was going to take $10 million from the state coffers just to give to the city of Manchester. And it failed, and I'm glad it's failed.
That failed 185 to 159. And that was, what were they thinking, Bill?
What were you thinking? Were you thinking?
Yeah, absolutely. What were they thinking? Another bill that we talked about, what were they thinking, was HB 1799. And this was, again, it was a little deceptive. It was to increase school funding by $675 million, which sounds great. But it was really hidden that it would be funded by a state income tax. And what do you think about having a state income tax, Arnie?
Mike, it was either a state income tax, raising your property tax, or it was an enterprise tax. So I believe that's just a sneaky way to try to get an income tax here.
And again, we know we're in the second year of a biennium budget. There's no money. We won't have money until we get to the new budget next year. And to put this in, and I tell you, this is on some of these bills that drives me crazy. What were they thinking? Is every time you put a bill in, even though it doesn't make sense, it costs almost $1,800 to process that bill. And to waste, tens of thousands of dollars on crazy things, it's frustrating.
Yeah, we've talked about putting a bill in that if your bill's ITL'd, the sponsor has to pay back the state.
So,
this is definitely, what were they thinking?
What were they thinking? Absolutely. And the last bill that I came across about what were they thinking, and I still can't figure out why anybody would sponsor this. What it was is HB 1427, and that would limit towns, counties, and schools from bonding any kind of a project, unless it was an emergency. And I just thought to myself, how do you plan a fire station? How do you plan an addition to your school? How do you plan to upgrade your sewer system, your water system, if you can't bond? The state has absolutely no business in trying to tell the towns how to run their business.
That's right.
We have hired elected officials, and that's what we pay them for. So this is, for me, this is a real one. What are they thinking?
What were they thinking? I have one more bill I'd like to talk about. It came out of my committee, Resource, Recreation, and Development, and it requires state agencies to provide current and verifiable evidence of any species present before imposing any land restrictions. And I find that very important. It's definitely a landowner rights position. As amended, this bill requires that Executive Director of the Department of Fish and Game to produce records collected relative and ensures endangered wildlife and species And they also need the landowner's permission.
Sounds like a very simple bill, and it's got to do with fish and game stuff, but it's huge because any type of project before it can go through, they've got to check for endangered species and stuff like that. And this way, the project cannot be stopped if there is not evidence of
That's
the
correct.
endangered species.
Well, this came out, ought to pass, as amended, 192 to 152.
It's definitely landowners and property owners' rights. The second part of that was really important is that no one can go on your property and inspect for those endangered species unless they have permission.
Written permission.
Or warrant. That's right. I know of a project that happened in Vermont probably about 20 years ago, and they have their Act 250, and they have to do an archaeological survey on the property before the project can go. And one of the companies that was going to build it, their competitors, went in and put in some old arrowheads, and it held them up for 2.5 years. So this takes care of that. I mean, this makes things clean and the way it should be.
Yep. So do you have some bills to go over that we talked about last week and how they resulted?
Last week we talked about HB 1415, which was to establish a special plate for veterans with $60 cost, but the $60 was going to go straight to veteran projects and veteran programs, and it passed unanimously in the House. I was very, very pleased to see that.
How about the bill with the electric car parking situation?
Well, that didn't go so well. It depends, I guess, which side of the fence you're on. It was kind of I don't want to say a joke, but everybody thought that it was senseless and parking enforcement. Having your police because you parked in a green car parking area. But you know what? It's still 149 people voted for it, but it did fail by a rate of 188 to 149.
Good.
The other one that we talked a little bit about last week was a couple of them was having a higher tax rate for second homes in your community and trying to raise more money. And that didn't get any traction. First of all, they don't think it's constitutional, but towns that really depend on the tourist business and second homes to help support your tax base, it didn't go, and that failed by 189 to 158.
Yeah, these people are supporting our tax base, but they're not really using our services.
Right, there's no kids in school. They're not using your water systems. They're not using your septic systems. They're not using your transfer stations. They're not using your police, your fire. As much as we don't maybe like to have them there, we really need them there.
Yep.
And the last one that was interesting was the towing bill. If you remember, we talked about last week that if your car gets towed after an accident and you don't pay your bill, the state of New Hampshire takes your license. And to me, that just sat wrong.
Yeah.
The state shouldn't be involved with private business. And there was a lot of argument about that, but it finally, the towing bill was defeated, ITL'd. So that is no longer in effect that the state can take your license if you don't pay your towing bills.
Right.
And that was 256 to 84. So that was a good one.
Yeah. Now we had a little feedback from one of our reps in the Resource Recreation and Development, Nick. He said we don't argue about anything. I said, well, my wife's not here, Mike's wife's not here, so we get along pretty good. We'll try to bring up some. We welcome your feedback, and we'll try to get a couple of controversial bills that we don't agree on. See if that'll please our buddy.
And we do have some. The thing that I find is the House, it sounds simple, but it's very difficult. And it's very difficult to find your way through because there's not a lot of people you can trust.
Yeah, that's for sure.
The next part of our program, and we're going to do it weekly, is Lori's Corner.
Welcome back. This is Lori Corzin, and today I want to talk about a topic everyone claims to understand, but almost nobody actually explains. That is school funding and Berlin's property tax problem. If you attend a city council or school board meeting, you'll hear the same refrain from the agents of the old establishment that Concord doesn't pay enough for our schools. Sometimes it's phrased as a political attack, as Republican state reps refuse to increase adequacy aid, when in fact, just in my short time as a state rep, we have increased Berlin's funding by 8% last year and another 10% this year. The same people saying that the state doesn't pay enough will never say that their end goal is to create an income tax. They just keep saying, send more money from somewhere, somehow, some way. But here's the part that usually gets skipped in the blame game. Since the first Claremont ruling, controlling Concord has gone back and forth between Republicans and Democrats. Both parties have had majorities. Both have held the gavel. And neither has delivered a permanent adequacy overhaul that solves everything. Courts can say a system is unconstitutional, which in and of itself is debatable. But they cannot pass a tax, set a rate, or write a check. That job belongs to the legislature, no matter who's in charge at the time. So instead of repeating that Concord doesn't pay enough, let's try a more accurate picture that begins with, this year Concord will pay. This year, Berlin will receive about $14,469 per student in state adequacy aid. Statewide average is just over $7,000 per student. That puts Berlin near the very top in New Hampshire. $14,000 per child. That's not spare change falling out of the state's couch cushions. That's real money earned by real taxpayers. Now, let's put that number next to something people actually recognize. In-state tuition at our public universities run in the mid-teens per year. That's tuition alone. Berlin state aid per student is already in that neighborhood. And that's before a single local property tax dollar or federal dollar is added. When K through 12 funding starts bumping elbows with college tuition, it seems fair to pause and ask a basic question. What exactly are we paying for, and why is it never enough? This is where education freedom accounts blow up these talking points. An EFA gives a family roughly $4,800 to $5,200 per year to educate a child outside the traditional district system. Private school, tutoring, online learning, homeschool materials, that's a full year of education for about $5,000. So let's line this up. A Berlin district student receives about $14,469 from the state. An EFA student is educated for about $5,000 total. Somehow, families with $5,000 are making education work, while systems spending 2 or 3 times that amount keep insisting it's impossible. Either those parents are performing daily miracles, or the issue isn't the money. One side of the aisle is fighting to give families choice with about $5,000 per year. The other side is fighting to keep every child and every dollar locked into a system that can spend $14,000 to $25,000 per student and still say it's not enough. So that brings us to a question no one wants to answer. How much is enough? If $14,500 per student from Concord, plus local taxes, plus federal funding, still can't deliver reading, math, and basic life skills, then the problem probably isn't the size of the check. It's how the money is being spent, who controls it, and how few choices families actually have. At some point, send more money stops being a plan and starts sounding like an excuse. Before anyone demands more, they should answer one simple question. At what dollar amount do you finally admit the issue is management, priorities, and lack of choice, not just funding? We must never lose sight of the fact that money isn't the only thing on the line here. Our kids are. Let's fix the system for them, not just feed it more cash. This has been Lori Corzin. I'll see you next time. Thanks.
Next week, we're going to have a special guest. We're going to have Michelle Strasburger from Colebrook, and she's one of the organizers of the new charter school, Pinnacle Charter School. It's going to be opening up this year. And it's an interesting story. And the Pinnacle Charter School isn't your conventional charter school. And I'm really excited to have her come on with us and talk about it and how it's different. And I really, really think it's going to be a huge asset for the North Country.
Very good.
So, in conclusion, thank you for joining us in North Country Politics. We're available on Facebook and YouTube. Please feel free to message us, email us with any concerns, things you'd like to talk about. We'll take it all. We'll answer you.
Yep.
At the end of the program today, you'll see the website for the New Hampshire General Court. That's the House of Representatives. And you can see how all your representatives voted. We'll have our emails up there posted. And so feel free to use it. And this concludes our weekly episode. Thank you very much. And we hope to see you all next week.
Thank you.